We've got lots of different people back in the studio. I love that. Coined that phrase now. And it is time for those talking points, which you can see. We've got 7 of them to get stuck into. You can email your thoughts luckonsunday@racingtv.com. Get in touch with us on social media. We are very much focusing in the US, first of all, and with HISA Progress, that is the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority. Grace, back in. This is something that we touched upon with Tyler and your time out there, but it is at the forefront of everyone's mind out there. Horse racing integrity, but also safety, and we saw that borne fruit on Friday evening with the scratchings.
Yeah, it's quite a new thing that's actually been brought in over America. A lot of, obviously, it's basically just to make America racing a little bit more safer perhaps for the horses. Obviously over the years they have had quite a lot more casualties than we do over here, so they're just basically trying to improve their system over there, make things a lot more safer for the horses and the jockeys and everyone involved, and I think they're doing obviously a good job of that. It's going to take time just to figure out things and learn a bit more, but it's only a new thing that's come in over there, and I think they're doing a good job so far. Is
there any, or were you aware of any sort of backlash from the sports participants? You know, sort of whether or not I think sometimes we feel it here, like it almost like it's too much too soon. Those within the sport saying, "Hang on a second, this is too much. We're overreacting," or it largely all the measures that are coming been welcomed over there. Do you think?
I wouldn't say they've been completely welcomed. Obviously, having gone from no kind of these harsh regulations that they've brought in now, it's going to take people time to adjust and just learn the rules and regulations of it. So kind of placing that in straight away and the penalties that it comes with, people probably need a bit more time just to adjust and evolve to it, which they are going to obviously, it's going to happen over time. But I think it wasn't welcomed as much as they probably thought it was going to be.
The integrity side of things as well, Neil, is big out there. I guess with betting coming in as well, the fact that punters need to have confidence in what they're seeing.
Absolutely, but I you know, obviously America's had a lot of problem in the last few years with horses breaking down and dying at the track and stuff. I think from an outside observer, you'd say that if you had to pick what racing's biggest problem was in America, surely it's steroids. More than that. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think definitely with regard to the. I was very interested in the Baffert backlash, which was. I sort of wondered how big it would be out there. I think there was a prevailing sense that we look on going, oh well, you know, that's no great surprise, etc. Yeah. But I think there was a huge backlash against it. Well, there was out in the United States, and I still saw comments, you know, yesterday suggesting that they were pleased that there was people pleased he hadn't had a Breeders' Cup winner. So
yes. That's kind of what I was thinking about when we were talking about the Classic earlier, because I sort of feel like I thought that was the way it was going over there, but then, you know, the fairy tale dream story yesterday of the 10-year comeback Classic winner, I don't know, I'm not quite sure where they are at with it.
Breeders' Cup scratchings we need to come to next. So this is obviously notable horses, not just European, but the notable ones were European being taken out. Jamie, I don't know whether you've seen videos of the horses being trotted up. We saw Gimme the Beat Boys being trotted up. Some people commented on the surface that the horse was being trotted on. Con Marnane suggested that he floated like a ballerina, but obviously the vets didn't agree. I guess without getting stuck into the individual horses, do you see the importance at all festivals globally that if there's any doubt horses aren't allowed to run just because of the repercussions of that?
Well, I think there's a fine line, isn't there? Because ultimately, vets don't train racehorses, and just because a vet says the horse might not necessarily be 100% in a certain avenue, actually the trainer and the guys around the horses on a daily basis know those horses perhaps far better than the vets do. We had a horse kicked at the start, and the vet the other day suggested it might have a stress fracture, and it came out and bolted up to 10 days later at Huntingdon. It didn't have a stress fracture.
Was the horse lame? He or she lame after the
never,
okay,
never, and it wasn't even trotted up at the start.
Right.
The vet just saw it at the start, saw it take a bit of a glancing blow from the next door horse, and the vet took it out. Didn't even ask the jockey whether the horse was sound. Didn't trot the horse up. Came to me and said, "I thought it had a stress fracture," and yet afterwards didn't even take an X-ray of it. If she was that concerned it had a stress fracture, why didn't she take an X-ray of it? Got back on the box, came home, ran 2 days later, or whatever it was, and won. Bolted up.
How does it work in terms of like insurance and stuff? If you've flown your horse all the way to Santa Anita, you know, Jesse Harrington just one horse, It's much more impactful in that situation. Can she get any kind of compensation for that?
Unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to the owners paying the transport bill, which they've obviously gone there. They're paying the lad and the lass leading the horse up, and it's frustrating. Vets don't train racehorses. Trainers train racehorses, and we're the licensed individuals.
And when it comes to again bringing it back home, is it right that you're encouraged, Cheltenham Festival wise, for any idiosyncrasies to a horse's movement or a horse's gait, you're encouraged to take videos of and sort of warn ahead to say we know how this horse moves.
You are, and actually, in fairness, in those kind of situations, it does work well. Horses, not every horse moves, like a ballerina, as we all know. And as long as if you are making it aware that you've gone through all the sort of thorough checks to prove that it hasn't got any stress fractures here, there or anywhere, then they are understanding. However, these checks are seriously thorough, and the vets are paying the vets bills in order to show that the horse is fine. It's right, as I say, it's a fine line. We all want safety, and we want horses competing on a level playing field, and we don't want to see injuries. However, there's got to be some measure to say that trainers are training these horses, and if we're the licensed individuals, we have the ultimate responsibility for those horses.
Line of the night on Friday night went to Aidan O'Brien, who said to ITV Racing's Ollie Bell, when you're in Rome, you don't fight with the Pope, which I really liked, about the fact that he didn't kick off about his horse being taken out of the juvenile. Middle distance sires. So this is Derby winner Adayar, Derby second Westover, Hookham, a Coronation Cup winner, all heading out to Japan, Grace, to stand as stallions out there. I guess it's nothing new because it's been happening over the last decade or so, but it seems like in Europe we are falling increasingly out of love of the stamina-laden pedigree, and Japan could hold the upper hand in years to come.
Obviously I think over here in England we're breeding more for speed than we are for stamina, and Japan are breeding more for the staying kind of horses, and obviously that's why they're dominating in that field across the world, really. They're dominating in that area, and we're heading towards more sprinters rather than stayers.
I wonder what Westover's an interesting one, Neil, because I think he's a son of Frankel. I interviewed Barry Mann on the other thing that Nick Luck does, is his podcast, and immediately after it was announced, he couldn't do that either. It was announced that that the horse had an injury and was going to retire. I just assumed that he'd be a Juddmonte Farms horse, and as a son of Frankel. I mean, I think it's interesting that he is going to Japan. It must have huge sum must have been paid to do that. What did you make of it?
Well, I mean, obviously it's no big surprise that Japan, they're the world leaders now, aren't they? They've got the money. Everything ends up in Japan, it seems. But in terms of there being, it seeming to not be unfashionable over there to go for stamina, whereas in the UK. That seems to be a bit of a no-no. I kind of think if they're doing everything right, which they seem to be, and they're the coming force in racing, are we being a bit arrogant to assume that we know better and that we should focus on speed more over here? I don't know. I suppose it's just fashion, isn't it?
Is it a worry for potential national hunt stallions or not? We've still got enough, haven't we?
Yeah, there's still plenty, and obviously horses like Justin Terroir, who's going to be a prolific national hunt sire. He's actually just been bought and gone to Ireland now as well from France. So, listen, it is a concern, but I think we've got some lovely new sires on the block now.
The Euston inquiry. So this is, goodness me, this was a while ago. This was, I think,
it was the lockdown, wasn't it? It was kind of
just before COVID. Lockdown.
Yeah, because it was the reason that race people really noticed it in the UK was because UK racing had just stopped. I think maybe the day before. So everybody was watching. Was it Dundalk?
Yeah, I was in the following morning, on the Saturday morning, and we highlighted it. I was in with Tony Calvin at the time. He said, we've got to highlight this.
I can't remember. Was it a 5-runner race or something? And Dennis Hogan had the favourite and the second favourite. I think they were 2-5 and 4-1.
And they flip-flopped.
And basically, the 2-5 went out to 6-4, and the 4-1 went off odds on.
Yeah.
I mean, it did look a bit dodgy.
Well, let's be honest. It was one where everyone sat there and everyone knew and went, it's obvious what's happened here.
Yeah.
The inquiry has rolled on and rolled on. There was then pressure on the IHRB to say, where are we with this inquiry? And now
they've had some kind of secret information.
Well, it's tied up now, isn't it? They've
said they're not going to present a case against the trainer. They've just said, well, we're done with it, really, and he's off the hook for it. But I don't know, reading between the lines, it felt like new information had come out that they couldn't really disclose.
I guess what is frustrating is that we are 3.5 years?
Yeah.
3.5 years down the line. And moreover, we heard nothing.
We still don't know what's happened.
Yeah, whereas everyone feels they know what happened, if you see what I mean. It was hugely unsatisfactory.
It definitely was a bit dodgy, wasn't it?
I think, yeah, definitely.
I think you can say that, can't you?
Yeah, without a doubt, and that's why it was looked into.
Yeah.
But I think there's a sense of, and Dara O'Loughlin, the newish man there, you know, they're trying.
Well, they must be frustrated by it. Surely they wanted a better conclusion to it than this.
Yes, because this conclusion feels rather disappointing.
Yeah.
Given what transpired.
But when he came in, his in tray, this was just something he would have liked to have ticked off and, you know, really boxed off, and it hasn't really concluded, has it?
Starter yards. Is there room for starter yards at some of our all-weather tracks here? Grace, do we think, who's somebody that spent a lot of time in the States, where you have, trainers with not a huge amount of runners out there who can train at tracks? Is there something we'll ever see over here, do you think?
I mean, I think it'd be great if we did. Obviously, in America, you've got trainers that might only have 2 horses starting out. I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere, whereas if you can start off with 2 horses and you do well with them, then you can prove yourself, get more owners and more clients hopefully in, and build yourself up that way. Whereas you can just, in America basically, you'll have a big barn, multiple big barns at all the tracks, and you can just rent as many stalls as you need. So you've only got 4 or 5 horses, and you can rent 4 or 5 stalls. Or if you've got 20 horses, then you can rent 20 stalls, and you just pay per stall. So it makes it a lot more affordable, rather than if you want to set up in a yard and you've got a 20 stall yard, you've got to pay for the whole yard, whether you've got 5 horses or 20 horses. So I think for bringing in new trainers in, I think it'd be a great initiative to bring in.
If you do it at like Chelmsford or Wolverhampton or Newcastle, is there a problem that, you know, there's no farriers there's no vets? I mean, there are obviously some vets in Newcastle, but if you're in Newmarket, you've got all this, you know, ancillary businesses that service trainers. Is that why it hasn't happened?
You're in Lambourne, Jamie. How difficult would it be to facilitate, do you think, compared to Lambourne?
I think it's a great idea. If I was starting out, I would have loved to have started out in a starter yard. As you rightly said, you know, it becomes far more affordable if you're only renting sort of 4 or 5 boxes, and you've got the facilities on your doorstep. Then it makes it far easier to get going.
What was when you were starting up, cost-wise, was it daunting?
Yeah, seriously daunting. So I was lucky. I was renting a few boxes off a friend of mine who had a farm down sort of just south of Salisbury, and it was great. It worked in the fact that I was renting it per box. So in effect, it was kind of a starter yard, and it allowed me to get going. But the gallops weren't really sufficient, and obviously we moved up to Lambourne and really got going on the back of that. But if there was a starter yard in Lambourne, I would have been one of the first to jump at it. I think.
But it would be better to have it in a training centre than at a racecourse, really?
Yeah, you can still have it at a racecourse, because you know, when I was starting out south of Salisbury, yes, there were vets in Salisbury. Yes, you have farriers, but you know, your point about the infrastructure, you still have the infrastructure around those areas. There's still vets around there and farriers around there that can get there. You can be, you know, the farrier where I was down in Salisbury was a while away. So it's manageable, and I think it's a great initiative.
Gambling Commission fit for purpose.
Oh yeah,
I know what your answer is going to be. So this is off the back of some. This is off the back of some new appointees without a gambling background.
They appointed 7 new commissioners to the Gambling Commission this week, and none of them have any kind of background in gambling. They all look like bright people, and a couple of lawyers. There's a former civil servant, somebody that worked in the NHS. They've all got high-powered CVs, but none of them have anything to do with gambling. And in other quangos, it doesn't work that way. Like in almost all other quangos, if you want to get a job in them, you're expected to come through the industry. Now, I can see why the Gambling Commission feel that's not a good idea, because gambling is always pitched as this argument between people that are industry and people who are, inverted commas, gambling reformers, or some people that want to abolish gambling. And I think there's a feeling that if you employ somebody that's ever worked for any betting company, they're just going to be biased and you're going to be accused of bias. And that's probably why they have that policy. But there's no reason to have that policy. That's the thing that they've decided themselves. And it just means that whenever they get new people on their board, they don't really know anything about gambling. And I think that's a bad thing. I also think that, generally speaking, and this is a more wider point, you know, government is less impinging on people's lives. There's a lot of areas of the UK public life where quangos have quite a lot of power without necessarily legislation being passed. And there's a danger, well, it's already happening with this white paper. You know, the white paper's never going to get turned into a gambling bill this side of a general election. So it's going to go, you know, the white paper that we waited all that time for it. And now, if the Labour Party get in at the next election, they're going to have to decide whether they stick with that white paper or rip it up and start again. Meanwhile, the Gambling Commission just motoring on. We've had 2 years of affordability checks for a lot of people, and it's cost a lot of turnover, and it's cost the horse racing industry a lot of money. And that's because the Gambling Commission have become too powerful, and it's about time Lucy Fraser rein them in a little bit, really.
Funding transparency. This is relating to the Iron Man, Neil Channing. He tweeted something in the week suggesting the amount that racecourses receive in media rights. What we want to ask here is I think something we've asked before, to be honest, is do we need more transparency with regard to how much racecourses get for media rights when we are concerned about the funding model, Jamie, of the sport? Is it something that you would like to see? Is it not something that really concerns you? Is it racecourses business? No,
I think it concerns everybody in the industry, and I think we should see what profit they are getting from it, and how that can be better put back into the industry. So no, I'm all for the transparency.
Where are you on racecourses and the power yielded, Neil?
Well, I mean, I don't think. Surely, apart from people that are directly involved with racecourses, pretty much everybody in the sport thinks that racecourses have got too much power. And, you know, it's pretty much universally agreed in the sport of horse racing that we have too much racing, and there are too many small field races, and there's not enough prize money. And the people that have an interest in not slashing the fixture list or raising the prize money because they say they can't afford to are racecourses. And, do we just believe them when they run fixtures where the prize money's barely grown year on year for 10 years?
They're not making any money out of those. To some of the lack of rises in prize money over the last 2 decades. So sometimes it's quite stark. I mean,
if you look at You Were at Wales listed race yesterday, it had 3 of the top mares in England running in it. It was a £25,000 race. The race that Passing Well ran in at Ascot yesterday when he was second was a £20,000 race. No offence to the novice handicap at Ascot, but surely having the 3 best mares in England should be running for more money than just £25,000.
On the bell. Perfect. Neil didn't even get the chance to talk about affordability checks. But don't worry, because we might be discussing that next. That's Talking Points done and dusted.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.